Hello, I'm Alex, and this is my podcast series, Entertainment Voice. Today's topic is on the Persona franchise, one of my favorite video game franchises, in which we will be talking about the third and fifth installments. Today, I have my guest, Lily. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. How about you?
I'm doing fine myself. So, let's get started with probably the most popular game in the franchise, the Persona 5. So, let's first talk about how the gameplay is, really.
Well, I really like the gameplay because a lot of the older games did have a more simplistic way of doing it, but with Persona 5, they added a weakness and strength system, which I think is really relevant. Even though all the games have it, it feels way more stronger than it was in Persona 5 or Persona 4, I mean. Persona 4, Persona 3, it feels way more stronger. And I remember seeing somebody comment on how a lot of the weaknesses and strengths, a lot of the enemies can't counter you as easily as Persona 3. And I actually found that very interesting.
Yeah.
So that was a pretty interesting thing that I played through the game and I think that was pretty interesting. What about you? What do you think is important?
Well, I believe that I blinked out for a second. I really like the JRPG element. Like I play lots of them. Like off the top of my head, like the rest of the Shin Megami Tensei series as well as Final Fantasy. So
Yeah.
yeah, I really like the inclusion, and also I believe in the older personas that you cannot control what the party members do.
Yeah. You know what? I'm going to This is the thing I don't really like about the newer Persona is that you have way too many choices and it feels a little bit like if I don't get this done by this deadline, I'm not going to be making it further in the game. And what's really scary is sometimes when you're playing the game, and especially with a lot of the Persona games, is that you have choices of who to hang out with. And I always seem to find that a huge issue when it comes to gameplay because there is so many people. And it's a little too free of choice to the point where I kind of think over it again, you know? But a lot of the games, they do perfectly fine with simplicity. I think a lot of games do have simplistic styles. I think Persona 5 has a unique way of not being so simplistic, you know?
Yeah.
Because it feels like at the beginning you definitely have a free choice on what to do, but as the game continues, you have to be a little bit more careful with your decisions and your choices. So it feels a little boggling, but I mean, it's
Yeah.
okay.
I'm pretty sure that like midway through, I had to pull up like a what to do like list on Google because there's just like so much stuff.
Yeah.
Anyways, you did mention the characters, so let's talk about that. First, let's discuss about the Phantom Thieves.
All right. Well, the Phantom Thieves are known as the main group of the game. And
Mhm.
so a lot like Akechi, which is one of the characters in the game, is heavily against this and you end up becoming friends with him within the game.
Yep.
And so really he's against it and you're friends with him and you're kind of like, "What?" It's actually pretty shocking that a lot of people are with them at first because if this happened in real life, I doubt anybody would really be very nonchalant about it.
Yeah.
A lot of people would worry a lot because that's kind of crazy to explain to people about cognitive hurts and how a group is changing people's behavior. I mean, it's kind of makes you feel like it's blackmail, you know? So I feel like they're accepted a little too easy in society in the game. But besides that, I don't have any issues with them because you know what's going on.
Yeah. Let's also talk about the additional social links, but we first gotta explain what social links really are.
So social links are a character level, let's just say. It's a scale from 1 to 10, and the more you hang out with a character, the higher it gets. And the higher it gets, the more social interactions or more friendly interactions you have with them. So let's say for an example that a character was at level 1, they wouldn't really be as open to you as they would be at level 10.
Yeah, and the more you hang out with them, the more your Arcana levels up, and with that you also get benefits like when you're in battle. So
Yes. Actually, I leveled up my Anne for the first time, and I got her to level 10, and I actually did feel pretty much a difference. So I'll probably be maxing out all of them. I mean, I'd hope I'd do that, but I think there is a difference really with getting someone to level 10.
let's also talk about some villains. To keep it mainly spoiler free, we'll go up to Futaba's palace.
So the first few palaces are actually not that bad. I did struggle with more of the ending ones, but of course we're not going to be talking about that today. I did struggle a lot with those, and I know a lot of people did. But you want to talk about the first palace, I'm assuming, right?
Yeah. Okay. The first palace is kind of awkward. It's about this. Oh, how did I say?
Okay, let me say it. It's about a teacher at the school who, let's just say, is not a really nice guy to his students, and he abuses his students. And so this is the first time the Phantom Thieves decide to make an attack on someone or a teacher, at most specific. And so they end up going into his palace and taking his cognitive heart. Now, I would like to preference this with saying that a cognitive and a change of heart are two separate things, but at the same time, they are, A change of heart is taking away the treasure in this said palace. This palace could mean literally anything. It could be how they see the world, how they see their job, or how they see anything. So in this instance, the teacher saw his palace was a king's palace. So
Yeah.
he saw himself as the ruler of all these students and saw himself above everybody else and ended up taking advantage of his team, in which he had coached the females volleyball team and one of the male teams at the school, and he ended up abusing them and telling them, hey, if you don't, get a good win, then, you're going to be kicked out of the team. And in which that's a horrible thing. When the protagonist first comes to the school and he finds out about this, he's upset. He doesn't know what to do. But then he ends up finding out about two other students, which are Ryuji and An. And he ends up being like, all right, you know what? Let's save this, because, that's such a horrible thing to go through. So he ends up going into the palace by accident, actually. And he ends up finding out what had been happening, and he had been upset. And so let's just skip forward a little bit.
Yep.
At the end of the palace, he ends up stealing his treasure, which a treasure is basically what's the most valuable thing to you, or your most, I guess, you could also see it as like your guilt.
Yeah.
Like a treasure of guilt. But, that's a theory really among fans. Obviously, you can't be specific with it. But yeah, that's essentially what the treasure is, and they end up stealing the treasure, and he ends up coming out with a confession about abusing all these students. It's actually quite insane.
Yeah, and there's a multitude of how the villains work in the game, but we're kind of out of time with it, so let's get to I put a spoiler character. I accidentally put Maruki. We're not going to talk about him, so we're just going to go to this. Okay, you kind of explained the plot. Let's talk about let's hang out. Let's talk about the let's talk about the music.
All right. Do you want me to start?
Yeah, go ahead.
So, I think the music's a huge part of the game because when you first start in the game, the music is like amazing. So, in all of the games, the music is different. Like, I know for Persona 3 that it is acid jazz, right? I think that's what it's called. A lot of people are still skeptical about that, but we're just going to say that for the time being. I know Persona 5 is rock jazz, and then Persona 4 is jazz pop, but we're not going to be talking about the other two today. So Persona 5 has a really good atmosphere because as you go through the game, you hear this music, and it kind of feels like you're in a cafe, but at the same time, it's good music. And I don't mean to offend any, people who work in a cafe and they just have horrible music, obviously. But the music is very, I don't want to say low, but it's just amazing. I mean, when you first go through the game, it's not something you would immediately pick out, but at the same time, it could be something you pick out. After a while, I was like, wow, this music is insane. They had an amazing soundtrack with amazing singers, and it's not quite different from their Persona, But one topic I would like to go on is how much I do not like Aria of Souls. That song. Every time I heard it, I could just hear myself getting mad at Igor. Because within the game, there's also another system where you can level up your personas and make new ones in which you capture. So, one time, I had been upgrading my persona and ended up getting all lullabies. I was upset at this point, and hearing that song made me even more mad. So now, I don't have a good taste with that song, alright? So some of your reaction moments are gonna make you mad, and with the song now. Now you're gonna take it out on the song. So, it's not very amazing, but I think the soundtrack is good besides Aria of Souls. Like, a lot of people do say how it's a good song. You can walk out. I don't like the song. I don't.
And we're also going to be talking about Persona 3. So, yeah. First, let's go off the gameplay of it and its differences.
As I had said previously, the gameplay of 3 and 4 is pretty simplistic. So, in Persona 3, you still have a weakness and strengths thing, but it feels a bit harder to get by, especially at the beginning of the game, because you do not have a navigator or someone who's able to identify the weaknesses immediately when you enter battle. So, when you first awaken your persona, I think the tutorial is pretty nice. I think it's definitely was eye-catching for me. And, I mean, the game the remake of the game just came out recently.
Yeah.
I have been playing it. Honestly, I really like it. It's more of a game you would play on a chill day. I don't think it's a game that you would necessarily play on a day where you're raring to go. That's more of a Persona 5 thing. But a lot of times I only play Persona 3 in order to, relax because of how simplistic and casual it's able to be. So it feels really nice.
Yeah, there's definitely a quite a tone change between 3 and 5. So yeah, I played the original Persona 3. So
yeah, I think a lot of the original games were a bit funnier than how they were, and I'm speaking on Persona 4 for that. Yeah, that was a huge tone difference when they had remade the game.
Yeah.
Because there was a lot of jokes, and then it just kind of went down a bit. So I will say more of the remakes are a bit less like the originals, like just by a tiny bit. If you play the games, like both the original and the remake, you notice it. I will say, unpopular opinion here, but I do believe the new music for Persona 3 Reload, is better than the old one.
Oh yeah, I definitely heard it. I'll agree with you on that take.
Literally, a lot of people who played Persona 3, the original, sit here and say it's not better, but the sound quality is way better, and it's better. I mean, even the singer is a YouTuber.
Yeah.
So they ended up pulling her from YouTube and saying, hey, you want to sing? And just threw her in a studio. So And she did amazing on the soundtrack. Like, Changing Seasons felt really different because in the original version, it was French. Or that's what I picked up, at least. It was seemingly French, and you could not understand the lyrics at all, if you spoke English, of course. And so when they came out with one of the new songs, it definitely felt like a huge change. But going back to the simplicity of the gameplay, throughout the, game, you go up this tower called Tartarus, and basically it's a never-ending tower, which is, I guess, kind of, yeah, that's how you explain it. I mean, it's a never-ending tower. There's teleporters on some of the floors in which you could go back, save, or leave. You could do really anything. So I think this game's more simplistic than Persona, because in Persona 5,
Yeah.
you have to find a person to go into their palace. When it comes to Persona 3, it's more of you walk in, you can do whatever you want, and then get out. Because it's a tower, it's never ending.
Yeah.
And I feel like the lore drop that you get from every 20 levels, I'd say, feels huge. It feels like insane. Because you're kind of building up to a point, and then you get it. So it feels like a really good accomplishment when you finally get a lore drop. Because it takes forever.
Yeah. Well, I think you kind of did win on the main premise and story of it. So, how about the characters?
I think, honestly, the characters aren't that bad. I wish at the beginning of the game, though, you would have a lot more chances to speak with them, per se. Why I would like to bring this up is because a lot of the time when I was first playing the game, and just the first part, the issue is that I had struggled knowing what to do because I hadn't known if this game was different from Persona 5. And yes, Persona 5 was my first Persona game.
I believe it was most people's.
Yeah, Persona became really popular when it came to Persona 5. But when it came to the confidence system and your social links, you had no clue if you had to, meet up with them. I also think that if you hang out with a specific person when they ask, it levels up your confidence easier.
Yeah.
I feel like that was a good add-on, but if you don't go with them, then it kind of hurts your progress a bit, because then you just don't know what they're going to say in that social link or that social media meetup. So I think that was a really good addition to the game. I know Persona 5 kind of has something like that, but it doesn't hurt your, I guess, storyline with them or, their progress. So I think that was a really nice detail that they made, because that's how it works in real life. If you don't hang out with someone, obviously they're going to be a bit upset, and I think that was more of a humane way to do it.
Yeah.
It felt like a nice add-on and function to the game. I also want to talk about the shadows and the ability attacks, but that could come at a later time. The characters, I would say they have a nice, decent amount of outside characters and inside characters. And what I mean by inside is they live with you at the dorm. So Mitsuru is one of the characters that you first meet at the beginning of the game. And that's what I mean by inside character. She's one of the first characters you meet that is on your team. And so there's also outside characters, which I think her name's Yuko, right?
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember that right. Yuko is one of the track managers, I guess is a way to put it. And you join her team at the beginning of the game. I mean, if you feel like it. But, of course, a lot of people did. So when you meet her first at the beginning of the game, she's considered an outside character. She's not playable. So...
Yeah. I also did want to mention that Persona 3 introduced the social link system.
Yeah.
I've not played the Persona 1 or either of the 2 games, but from the gameplay that I saw, there's no social link system at all.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. A lot of the original games didn't really have that per se. I guess is a way to put that. Because I know a lot of people argue that Persona 4 is way better when it comes to characters. And I know that's something a lot of people could agree on, but when I played Persona 5, it had felt like an entire new experience. And same with Persona 3. They all felt like different experiences, and I think that's something that a lot of games should have. So, a lot of games, are amazing when they have multiple games in a franchise, but at the same time, they feel very different. Not everybody would want to have that. When it comes to Persona 5, they just keep making new games in which kind of feel a bit weird. I do love having Strikers out for more Akechi lore. That is fun. Because a lot of the characters, or some of the characters that were at parts of the end of the game, like that you didn't get to meet, or where you met them and you had such a short amount of time, I think at least those people deserve a second chance for a game. So I think I understand it a bit in that sense, but it just really depends, because realistically you meet them more at the end of the game.
All right. Now since we're finishing up and done with our kind of compare and contrast, let's go over what we prefer. First with gameplay, who do you prefer?
Oh, that's a hard one, considering Persona 3 is more for a casual experience, So, between Persona 5 and Persona 3, I know this is a really kind of popular opinion, but I think Persona 5 takes it for me.
Yeah, easily.
Because I just enjoy the characters and the way that the party system works. And I like having multiple characters where I can kind of choose where their ability goes. And I know that happens in Persona 3 a bit, but at the same time, I just prefer Persona 5.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you there. In my opinion, the whole JRPG element of it is like way better in the game compared to 3, in my opinion.
Because, 3 was an older version of, a Persona game. So, of course, they're not going to have everything implemented. But I also think Persona 3 is just a good casual game. It's not very serious, I would presume.
Yeah, it's kind of serious, but that's getting into spoiler territory. But anyways, what part is more enjoyable?
Oh, that's actually a hard one too. I like how the lore drops in Persona 3, that you get pages.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed that. Persona 5, I'm sorry, it has to take the cake for me.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, sure, I do like my lore entry, but I really like more so experiencing the story when I play a game. Like, no offense to people who really like reading like pages of lore, but I really prefer like the gameplay to show the lore instead.
Yeah, I agree with that heavily. I think that was pretty nice.
That's why I also love story games.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Next, let's compare how the character systems work. What do you prefer?
Honestly, I prefer Persona 3. And I only say that because of the thing where, like, if you don't hang out with them, they kind of get upset at you. I think that was a really nice detail, and it makes it feel more realistic, even though the game is more supposed to be known not for its realistic purposes.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's what I agree with, at least.
Well, finally, for the last two, first, let's go with music. What do you prefer?
Persona 5. No. Wait, that's a hard one. Actually, I listen to more Persona 3 music than I do Persona 5. But there's a reason for that. A lot of the Persona 5 music is, especially I could say this with Beneath the Mask, that song has 2 different versions. So I technically can't double those up. If I went through my playlist right now, which let me unlock my phone, I could definitely count that I have more songs from Persona 3 than I do Persona 5, which I just checked and I do. I think it's more of me personally just liking acid jazz.
Yeah, I'm more of a 5 guy, but that's more so of like my personal preference of the genre.
Yeah.
Finally, what game do you prefer overall?
Persona 5 was an original for me, so I would have to say Persona 5.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Persona 5. I definitely recommend picking up the Royal copy if
Yeah.
you do pick it up.
100%.
Yeah.
Because the Royal adds another extra, like, double semester onto your thing, and it just feels way more of, like, you can kind of take your time.
Yeah.
It just depends on what you do, you know, because your choices up to that point matter so much. So,
Yeah. Overall, they're both pretty good games, and I highly recommend them.
yeah. My first game was Persona 5 Royal. So,
I definitely recommend getting into 5 first before you get into, like,
I think three's pretty simplistic though when it comes
Yeah.
to it. If you want to learn a bit more about the game, I would say start out with Persona 3 for just a bit and then switch to Persona 5 because I think you get a lot more explaining, I guess, from Persona 3, I feel like. I'm speaking Persona 3 Reload.
yeah.
So if you do end up playing that, I would start with Persona 3 Reload and then go to Persona 5.
This reminds me of I bought the original Persona 3, and then like a few days later, they announced the Reload version.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, hey, at least you get to experience the original.
Yeah.
So, I mean, yeah, but I do want to bring up another topic about the voice acting. I think that the voice acting from Persona 5 is the exact same as Persona 3 Reload. I genuinely, wholeheartedly believe it. Persona 4 tops all of them. I don't mind what anyone says. That game was funny. And I'm speaking the oldest copy, which I forget what console that is. But the oldest copy, right then and there. The voice acting was so funny.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the games are really equal when it comes to a good amount of voice acting, but Persona 4 is definitely something that takes the cake.
Yeah. Overall, I recommend the Persona series. I recommend the Persona series if you do like the JRPG games. I recommend 5. Wait, you said 3, 5, and then 4. I don't really recommend going after the first game or the
Second, yeah.
yeah, as they're like $1,000 on eBay, plus you gotta get like a PS1.
Well, and the fact that the gameplay, I think it was Persona 1 if I'm not insane. I think it was Persona 1 that the gameplay was actually super bad because you could barely turn in a hallway.
Yep.
Yeah, no. But I probably will touch Catherine. That's probably a good one
yeah.
too. I love Catherine. The music's good for it, at least, in my opinion. So.
And yeah, that should be it. Yeah.